Okay, at this time, I'd like to call to order the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission meeting. It's September 13th. It's 2:32 in the afternoon. And what I'll do now at this point, I'll take a roll call. Commissioner Doobie, District 4. Galen Bird, District 7.
Here.
District number 2, Ralph Brokaw.
Here.
District number 6, Richard Ladwig.
Here.
District number 1, Mark Jolovich.
Here.
District number 5, Ashley Lundvall. And I'm Ken Roberts from District 3. I note that all districts are being represented and that we do have a panel or we do have a quorum to continue. If I could get everybody to pledge allegiance and follow us at this point.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic that stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, all commissioners that the minutes from the July meeting were emailed to everyone. Does anybody have any corrections to the minutes, or if there's no corrections, can we go ahead and have a motion to approve them? Okay, it's moved by Commissioner Lundvall and seconded by Commissioner Byrd to approve the minutes from July. Is all those would signify in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none opposed, then that carries. And one thing, I did a little housekeeping measure. To those watching on via Zoom, if you did not send an advance comment sheet prior to the start of the meeting, who would still like to comment on the agenda item, please do one of the following. If you're on Zoom via your computer, you can send a chat to the host with your name and agenda item you wish to comment on. If you're listening on phone, you can send an email to WGFDIDEO@yo.gov, making sure to include your name, phone number you're calling from, and the agenda item you wish to comment on. And also another housekeeping that after each agenda item, we will take public comment, and we will first hear those who have submitted their advance comment sheet. If you did not send in an advance comment sheet prior to the start of the meeting, but would still like to make a comment on the agenda item, you can do so by one of the following. If you are on Zoom via your computer, you can send a chat to the host with your name and the agenda item you wish to comment on. If you are listening on the phone, you can send an email to WGFDIDEO@wyoming.gov, making sure to include your name, phone number you're calling from, and the agenda item you wish to comment on. When your name is called, you will be prompted by the host to the role of panelist. Once you have entered the meeting as a panelist, you'll be able to unmute your microphone and turn on your video if you so wish to speak to the commission. Okay, with that housekeeping thing, the first item that we're going to address is this will be go ahead and Director Nesbitt.
Oh, good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the commission. I've got a few items here today. So my first two, you're going to be receiving a lot more detailed information on, but I did want to bring them up as something that we've been working hard on here recently. First of all, there's been some pretty significant and I would say negative turn of events with regards to zebra mussels in South Dakota. I'm very concerned about this. I'm very concerned about the proximity to our border. I think that I've directed Alan to put together a group where we can take some pretty make some expedient decisions on how we're going to address this threat. I'm now viewing this threat as becoming even more imminent than a threat from even like Lake Powell at our southwest border. So Alan's going to give you some good details on that. He's got an agenda item, I believe it's tomorrow, to give you some of the specifics there. Angie's going to give you a good update on crossings. We've been working hard with YDOT to try to finalize an agreement there and to make sure we've got our priorities synchronized with YDOT for our next crossing projects. It's really important for the commission to continue to support those. I know you all do. You all ask me about it all the time. Angie will have the details on where we're at with all the crossing work. Wildlife Task Force, Commissioner Doobie and I serve on, met again since the last commission meeting. They met in August. We're also meeting here later this week. Of note, there were a couple of recommendations that went to the TRW committee at its first meeting and then came to this TRW meeting at the end of August in the form of two bills. One of those bills was related to the task force's recommendation to transition from a preference point system to a bonus point system specifically for bighorn sheep and moose. That bill did pass the committee and now will advance to the general session here in January. The other bill that they considered was was splitting in statute the definition for deer and basically splitting out whitetail deer and mule deer and treating them differently. And that bill did not pass. It didn't even receive a motion. It died for a lack of a motion. So again, I think what it really emphasizes is that the task force again they have a role to make recommendations with no authority. The only real authority, decision-making authority really comes from this body or from the Wyoming legislature, certainly the governor. So they have several items that are out for public comment right now relating to landowner licenses, relating to waiting periods in hard to draw areas. And those are all receiving public comments as we speak. They'll be considering those ideas here on Friday. The task force will meet in November and then we'll wrap up in December. That will be the last meeting of the Wildlife Task Force, and then it will dissolve. I've been asked, is there going to be a move to continue it on? And I don't believe that will be the case. Had the opportunity yesterday to have our in-person board meeting with the Wildlife Fund Board of Directors. I look forward to you all being able to hear from President Chris McBarnes tomorrow on just that organization is really taken leaps and bounds in a short amount of time in the middle of a global pandemic to do some just outstanding work. They continue to work and get very close to a point where they will meet the commitment that the president made, where the Wildlife Fund will be self-sufficient, will not require any additional funds from the commission. I think that there will be an opportunity for Chris to be able to talk about that here in the coming months, potentially even as early as the November commission meeting. Of note, one of the concerns a lot of our field people have had is just this real increase we saw last year and the year before in public use of a lot of our facilities. Some parts of the state, dramatic increases to the point where we had concerns with impacts on displacing wildlife and even, decreasing quality of experience at some of our more popular public fishing areas and some of our high public use areas. Dirk Miller he does this every year for us. He takes a look at where we're at with fishing license sales. That's a really good indicator of public use in the summer. And fishing license sales up to the end of August were down about 11%. And that's all fishing licenses, non-resident, resident, day use, annual licenses. So there was definitely a decline this year. I suspect some of it could be related to water. It was certainly a dry summer in a lot of the state, and certainly some of it could be related to just the very high gas prices. So we received notice today that the three-colored bat, I've never seen one. I didn't even really know that we had them in Wyoming, but anyway, the three-colored bat is going to be listed as endangered in 39 states. And my understanding is we have this particular species in the eastern third of the state. What implications that may have on on the department or other wildlife management activities, I don't know yet. I do know that at this point, they have not indicated that they're going to pursue critical habitat designations, which oftentimes can create challenges for us when we do habitat treatment work. So more to follow on that. Like I said, I just got the notice about that today. I think it's important for the commission to know that based, every 2 years when we have a primary election and then a general election, there's changes in the legislature. There are a lot of changes this year. And so we will, we've got some things that are in the hopper here during the interim with this particular committee, but the committee will change by the time we get to the general session. And so that'll be one of the challenges we'll have, is to re-educate new committee members on some of the things that have happened here in the interim, and even some of the things that have happened in the past. We won't know what the makeup of the committee we deal with most with travel, recreation, wildlife, and cultural resources. We won't know the makeup of that probably till the December timeframe. But you know what? We've done this before, and it'll all be fine. I did also want to update the commission on, we recently, I think I've talked to many of you about the last couple of years. We talked about this at the retreat a little bit, have been looking for ways that we adapt and move forward with our communications and our education efforts across the state. As we all know, we've all got smartphones, and we all see technology change continually. And so as technology changes, the ways and the manner in which we communicate with our publics and also internally changes. And so we've, like I said, we've been talking to internally here with folks around the state for the last couple of years. Recently, the leadership team came to me with a recommendation to take the communications, the statewide communications folks out of the director's office. They've been housed there for the last about 10 years. Never used to be that way. That decision was made, like I said, about 10 years ago, based on the current set of circumstances that we faced at the time. But anyway, the recommendation was to pull them out of the director's office, and also then pull the information and education specialists that are located all over the state in our regional offices into their own division. And so I approved that recommendation. That will take effect on October 1st. I look at this as a very positive opportunity for us to be able to be more synchronized, to be more responsive across the entire state, to be more, to have a better opportunity to provide education. We recently, now it's been 3 years now, there was a legislative resolution that directed the superintendent of public instruction and myself to look at providing and increasing our hunter education opportunities in the school system. There's some real opportunities to do that with a more unified, synchronized effort. And really it brings more, I think, emphasis and prominence to our communications efforts. The way that we communicate is so important in the way we do business now, that having them as a standalone division, just like the other divisions, I think really makes a lot of sense. So that, again, that'll take effect on October 1st. It doesn't result in any changes it doesn't increase number of employees. It doesn't require reclassifications or anything like that. It's simply a structural move to create this new division. So Nish Gokalia will be the chief of that division. And her current classification allows her to be able to take on those responsibilities at that level. And then last, I just wish all of you and all of our constituents and members of the public around the state the best with hunting season. I know it started already, but the best is in front of us for most of us in the next couple of months. And so I wish everybody happy hunting. Mr. President, I'd stand for any questions you or the commission may have.
I have one comment, Director, and this is to yourself and to Chief Osterlund, that yesterday I had the opportunity to stop by the Tin Sleep and the Wigwam hatcheries, and I just want to go on record as saying that, I was greeted with a warm smile. The grounds were very well kept. The tanks were clean. The restrooms were clean. It was it's such a great thing for folks that stop by these hatcheries, and these folks are doing a remarkable job. And I just wanted to go on record as thanking them for, they were getting ready to haul fish around the state. They were cleaning, but they were very, very economical. They're very nice. And I just wanted to thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. All of our folks at our fish hatcheries and rearing stations like to have visitors from the commission. So thanks for doing that. You're all welcome anytime. So any other questions?
Mr. President, I have a question for Director Nesbitt. In southeast Wyoming, a lot of support for the whitetail mule deer split. Did the legislative committee give any indication why they didn't even want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think, they didn't really necessarily go on record to say why not, but well, I shouldn't say that, but some of them did. I think all of the public comment they received was all negative. They didn't receive any supportive public comment. I think, one contributor certainly is the concern that folks have that if you like to hunt both whitetail and mule deer, you have to pick which hard to draw species you're going to apply for in the first draw. And if they were separated and then a sportsman could apply for both, and it would decrease the drawing odds for both species. There was concerns with people who, if they had a license that was only limited to mule deer, they would feel like if they didn't harvest a mule deer, they didn't have an opportunity later to go get a whitetail. And so more buck harvest might occur out of if this change was made. That's some of the public comment I know they heard. Internally, I articulated this to the committee. We did have concerns in certain parts of the state with how it could affect landowners and how it could affect specifically just the way hunters distribute themselves on public land. That concern came up internally, and particularly in the Black Hills. And Black Hills is an area where we harvest almost a quarter of the annual deer harvest every year. So I think that's probably the fact that they didn't hear any positive public comments, probably the reason they didn't move that forward.
Certainly, most of my comments were from landowners that wanted to target whitetail damage, and they wanted a more aggressive approach to them as a species. But certainly understand the public's perception. Which
And
you
I
stated,
think,
so.
and I think those concerns, even under our current, the current system we have, we can use it to address those concerns. We just got to get them to the right people. So.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to agenda item number 3, Eric.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Director Nesbitt, members of the commission, Eric Woltanger, Chief of Services. Today I've got 2 updates for you. The first one is on your new Cody Regional Office. I think we've got a recent pic that Wayne will throw up here, but while he's doing that, I'm happy to report that we are still on schedule for substantial completion on October 6th. So things are looking good. The power's on. We're not operating off of generator power. So we've got power. I think next week we're looking at trying to turn on the HVAC and start the commissioning agent to do all the testing. So all good news on that front. Few minor issues. The parking lot had kind of a big sinkhole in it where water was collecting. So Harris Trucking came out and as of yesterday, I believe, grinded that down and filled it back in and patched it up to make that so that the water doesn't pool there. So we're getting some minor details, things fixed at the end here. The building's looking good. Lauren's up there today and went through the building, kind of did not a final punch list, but a punch list with our designer and looked at things, and he reported back that everything's looking pretty good. So I believe with no more delays, we'll be looking at October 6th, hopefully to take occupancy of the building. The region has worked hard to try to develop a timeline. Our furniture will be delivered the last week of September. So the furniture will be moved in before we take occupancy. And then the region hopes to move in probably in the middle of October is what they're shooting for, I believe. Dan gave me a good head nod, so I think that's correct. We had looked at the first week of October, but I think, with fishing season closing up, fish division being busy and hunting season in full swing, it's going to be a little bit tough, but we're going to work it out. Few minor items. I missed, I don't know if it was but I'll take credit for it. We needed some 50 amp service in the garage area and then the back shed. And we have 30 amp service. So the director's office has graciously offered to help out with some minor costs, a couple $1,000s. I think it's $2,600 to cover that. Right now we have 30 amp service. There's 7 outlets in there and we need that transformed to 50 amp service so we can plug in welders and plasma cutters. So that's one thing that we got a change order on, but I felt it wasn't necessary to bring to you guys, that we could probably absorb that. And Deputy Director Kennedy has offered graciously to cover that. That's an update, I guess, on any cost expenses that we've recently seen. A few other minor things that we're still working through and talking to the general contractor on, but I hope to get those resolved before October 6th. And I stand for any questions. As a reminder, we still have the open house ribbon cutting ceremony for November 16th. If you have no questions on Cody, Mr. President, I can move on.
I
to
don't
the
have
next
any
agenda.
questions, but I just wanted to thank you and Lauren and all the staff of the Game and Fish for a great job. And it's been very trying and difficult, but we appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, Commissioner Dubey.
Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 4.
So yeah, as we close out one big project, hopefully in the next month or so, we'll be starting, we have started another one, the foot's on the gas pedal with our Jackson Employee Housing Project. If you recall, just to update you, Jorgensen Associates are under contract for the design and they're working through that. They're actually on site right now doing some survey work and geotechnical stuff out there on the ground this week doing that. If you recall, I talked to you, the commission, earlier about a construction manager at risk, and that's the option that we choose for this project. It's interesting. We did kind of an on the ground tour for pre-proposals, and we've got one that showed up, a local one out of Jackson, a construction general contractor. We felt it was important to get more than one, so we delayed that by 2 weeks and worked through that process. And Lauren did a really good job of talking to the local community and getting it out there with our state construction department, trying to get the word out there to get a little bit more attention to it and see if we could get some more players in the game. 5 showed up to that 2 weeks later. And after that, the deadline came for basically submittals of the proposals, and we've got 1, the same one that originally showed up. The other 4 did not. So right now we're scheduled to do interview September 22nd, I believe it is, in Jackson. So we talked to state construction and kind of worked through that process to see what their thoughts were, to try to be as transparent as we can, but there's not a lot of people out there wanting to take this job on. So that's kind of the update on Jackson housing, where we're at right now. I stand for any questions if you have any.
I mean, how many houses are we going to do there? What phases and how many houses?
Mr. President, if you recall, we have 2 phases. The first phase was 6 houses, and I believe the second phase was 7. Of that 6, I believe there's a seasonal unit in there for phase 1. What we talked about attacking this first phase was all of the ground dirt work and infrastructure logistics for both phases, and then phase 1 houses.
Any questions or comments or anything? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We'll go to agenda item number 5. I'm not getting any sheets for anybody commenting on these, so I'm just moving along. So, Bruce.
Mr. President, Director Nesbitt, Commissioners. This afternoon, I'm going to give you an update on the large projects for wildlife crossings. And before I get started and waiting for the PowerPoint to come up, I want to reiterate that I'm sort of talking about the flashy large projects that we all have our eye on, that we're fundraising for. But the department is doing a lot of work on crossings and movement. That's just as important. And in November, you'll hear from them and some of the other work going on throughout the department. But today I'm going to focus on those large 5 top projects and give you an update. Maybe. There we go. Okay, the Dry Piney project, as you guys know, this got kicked off in May. Several of you were at the official kickoff date, and they've been actively working on this project. includes 9 underpasses and associated fencing. If you remember too, the commission really started this project with a contribution of $1,250,000 towards it. So that was enough to also get matching funds from partners and YDOT, and then a large federal grant as well. But I asked Mark Goki, Regional INE, to take a few pictures for me of the progress. And to date, they have 4 underpasses in. A lot of dirt work is happening. This is one of the box culverts that was put in. And I wanted you to see the contrast between this arch culvert. Now, this one's experimental. This one has a little bit more visibility to it. So if you look at this one and then compare it to the box culvert, you can see through the eyes of a pronghorn what that might look like. So the idea is that the arch one has a little bit more visibility, and we're hoping that we can get some of the pronghorn to move through it. So we'll be watching this closely and monitoring to see if it's successful or not. And then some of the exclusionary fences starting to go in. So this is the fence that guides the pronghorn and mule deer into the underpasses. And then these jump outs, which if they do get caught between the highway and the fence, they're able to get out. So again, progress is being made, and they will hopefully finish next construction season. Next, Casey to Buffalo. This project, the commission also contributed 1.25 million to kick off the fundraising efforts for this project. I'm happy to report that YDOT accepted the low bid at their August commission meeting of 4.6 for construction cost of that project. So it's under contract, which is exciting. However, due to fencing supply issues, which this project is almost 100% fencing, the contractor is not able to get supplies until next spring. So we probably won't see an official kickoff until next spring or later. So now with 2 projects underway and under contract, we've now turned our focus and fundraising effort to South Kemmerer. This is on Highway 189. Several of you got to see this on the tour at the July commission meeting and hear Sean Yancey talk about the impacts that this project's going to make. Roughly, this is my estimate only. I'm guessing around $20 million for this project. And then at the June YDOT commission meeting, they approved funding to move ahead the planning and engineering of this project. So they have just started that process. And what we're hoping is they get a good view of the scope and the cost of the project. The Federal Infrastructure Act that's in place offers $350 million as an opportunity for projects such as this. And then we are hearing that those federal dollars may not be available to apply for until next summer. But getting the planning and scoping and the engineering underway will set us up really good for applying for those federal dollars. And then before closing, I want to mention the 2 other large projects that are on our radar that we're working on. Halleck Ridge, the YDOT Commission in June also approved funding to start the planning and scoping of this meeting or of this project. I know they have the first meeting on the books and coming up soon, but they're really trying to understand what this project will all involve and prep us for additional dollars on this project as well. And lastly, I don't want to forget about the Du Bois project on Highway 26. There's a local team of folks working on this project and have been for several years now. And an interesting thing, that Grand Teton National Park applied for a grant through mechanisms and opportunities they have to fund the engineering on this project. We have yet to hear if they were a recipient of that money or not, but again, there's a lot of attention on this project as well. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
On the Dry Piney, I was just over that Sunday, and I don't know if everybody knew, but there was a huge flash flood that hit the whole, about wiped out the whole project with there, but everything withstood really well. And there are, and continuing is very good it looks good. It's coming together real well. Traffic's flowing through there, so there's not that much of an impediment for it, and it looks right on, looks first class. And it did take its first flood, so that was good. First of more than one. First in more than every torrential, flood. So it was good. So it worked. So anyway. Mr. President?
I would like to make a motion in the spirit of showing the commission support for wildlife crossings and the importance of it. I would like to make a motion that we contribute 500,000 to the South Camera Highway 189 project to help with additional funding, matching, and encourage others to do so as well. So I'd make that motion.
I'd second that.
Okay, the motion is made for goodwill thing for 500,000 for the South Kimmer project. It's the motion was made by Commissioner Doobie and seconded by Commissioner Jolovich. All those in favor of 500,000 towards that, say a single aye.
Aye.
And all the ayes carry it. There seems to be nobody that opposes to it. That'll maybe a good thing. It'll be a really good thing. So, thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Angie.
commissioners.
Mr. President, I have a question for Angie.
Okay.
Sorry, Angie. I was confused on your Dry Pony project, the box culverts versus the arch type culverts. Which ones are we getting?
Mr. President, Commissioner Brokaw, out of those 9 underpasses, 8 of them will be box culverts. And we did 1 arch culvert. The reason we didn't do all arch culverts is when we were looking at the pre-bid costs, they were about 25% more. So they're a little more costly, and they're just as easy to put in, but we didn't know if they'd be effective for pronghorn. We know the box culverts work for mule deer, but pronghorn like to go over because of that visibility issue. So this is an experiment to see if they will go under, and therefore if it's worth us adding that extra cost to do so.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I guess that brings up one more thing. It's been raised, what about snow drifts in these? And has there been any kind of a Wyoming's Wyoming, I guess, with the snow drifts, but is there any kind of technology out there that addresses maybe to do stuff with besides the typical snow fence for these crossings?
Mr. President, that is a really good question. I know that we review all the snow fences that are put up in relationship to how they block big game movement. And so our regional folks are always working locally with the YDOT offices to position them in a way to not block big game. But as far as a different technique for snow fences, I don't have an answer for you.
It was, and I think it'll be on a couple of ones in the South Kimmer. There's a couple very live that drifts are going to be a big concern on that. And I was just wondering if there was some sort of a college student doing some sort of a master thesis on that, or a doctorate or something out there that wants to take a grab at it to see if they can come up with something.
Good idea.
Mr. President, one thing, would you elaborate on the reason? I'd like the public to make sure they know why that South Kimmer crossings are so important, what's coming up in the future.
Yeah, so Mr. President, Commissioner, so you want to know the importance of the South Kimmer project or just projects in general?
I want people to understand why it's so important because of the traffic that is going to be going on in there.
Oh, Mr. President, Commissioner, thank you for that. Absolutely. So the South Kimmer project's been on our staff's radar for years, probably over a decade. And we've watched the numbers of collisions very high during the oil and gas boom in the area, and then kind of get lower. And we saw a decrease in the collisions the last few years. But due to the new development of the nuclear facility on that highway, there's been an increased concern and awareness due to all the traffic that new development will bring. And so that's why we shifted gears and made this a priority for us because there's a lot of concern. We're hearing it from you guys. We're hearing it from the public and constituents that they're extremely concerned regarding that new traffic that we're going to have on Highway 189.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Okay. This will be agenda item number 6. Meredith.
President, Commissioners, Director Nesbitt, Meredith Wood, CFO. Requesting some additional dollars be added to your FY 23 budget for the newly developed facilities maintenance program crew that we mistakenly omitted during budget development phase. So you previously approved roughly $368,000 for that program in July, but we failed to include any dollars to acquire small tools and supplies for them to do their job. So we are requesting today an additional $50,000 be added to your FY 23 budget for that program.
Which budget item? Which line item was that? What's that?
It's the budget is for Z30 for the statewide facilities maintenance crew program, which is under the services division. And if you have any specific questions, Eric can come and answer those, but it's to essentially, this is the first year and you approved already a truck, salaries and fringe, as well as a utility trailer for them to be able to travel around the state and address needs, maintenance needs at all of Game and Fish facilities. But we don't have any dollars in the budget to acquire small tools or parts that they need throughout the year. But that's what-
I have a question. Is that the new crew that was in Torrington recently doing the game warden house? Okay,
So, I'm just trying to figure out how to put it in a form of a motion.
Oh, my apologies. Mr. President, if you would just approve the addition of $50,000 to the FY 23 budget as proposed, that should work.
FY 23?
Correct.
So moved.
Okay. It's moved by Commissioner Ladwig, seconded by Commissioner Byrd to appropriate $50,000 additionally to the FY 23 budget. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this will be, do we have anything from the public? I'm kind of running through anything that's coming up, calling anybody. And it's kind of flying by and I want to make sure we didn't cut out somebody that wanted to comment of some sort. So, okay, let's move to, Jennifer, go ahead and do agenda item number 7.
Commission President, members of the commission, Director Nesbitt, I'm Jennifer Doring, the License Section Manager for the Wyoming Game and Fish. And I'm here today to request approval for 3 new non-sporting good license selling agents. The first one is the Maverick, number 235 in Kemmer, Wyoming, Bow River Crossing in Elk Mountain, and the Fireside Buffalo Valley in Moran, Wyoming. All of these 3 agents were approved by the local game warden and the regional wildlife supervisor for their respective districts. In Kimmer, we have 2 other agents, and those 2 other agents had a total of approximately $226,000 for the last year, so 2021 sales. We have no other agents in Elk Mountain. And in Moran, we have 1 other agent, which is Single Mountain Lodge, which sold approximately $20,000 in sales. And then we actually have 2 other agents in Alpine, which is about 60 miles. So those are kind of remote locations. So I wanted to provide you both of those license selling numbers. And in Alpine, they sold about $57,000 in sales.
Any questions or comments? From?
No,
Okay.
Mr. President, I'm ready to move the acceptance of the 3 new LSA agents as presented.
Okay, it's moved by Commissioner Brokaw, seconded by Commissioner Jolovich, to approve this 3. Is there all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion is carried. They have been approved.
Thank you.
Okay, and because we're zipping right along and everybody's happy, let's go to let's do Agenda item number 10. And Roy Weber. I don't know. This is the one you questioned before. This was the one you questioned before, so I don't know. Mountain, we already all wheeled all the way around. Why we need it.
Okay, Mr. President, members of the commission, Director Nesbitt. The Lands Branch has two land items for approval this afternoon. The first item we have is 120 acre in holding in the Spence and Moriarty WMA. The Sussman family has offered a 120 acre parcel surrounded by the Spence and Moriarty WMA for sale to the department. If acquired, the property will be incorporated into the Spence and Moriarty WMA and will be used for habitat management. The property supports elk, mule deer, moose, antelope, bighorn sheep habitat, as well as small game and bird species. The property is currently under contract for $72,000 or $600 per acre. And we believe the price is a very good price and reasonable for the property. The property doesn't have access across game and fish, and it's completely surrounded by game and fish property. And so the price is a really good, reasonable price. We did open it up for public comments, and we received 3 comments from the public. All 3 comments were very positive for us to acquire the property.
For 72,000.
$72,000 total for 120 acres. So if you look on this map here, the area, the rectangle, the blue rectangle is the property itself. And the red outlined area is the Spence and Moriarty WMA. So as you can see, it completely surrounds the property. The highway down on the northeastern side of the map there. I'm not sure. There we go. The highway running down here is the highway that goes up to Du Bois. And the East Fork Road runs north to south on the other side of the property. And here's a couple of pictures. The lower picture you can't see it very well, but there's some elk running up that hill right there. It's a good habitat for elk. So at this time, we are asking for approval to purchase a 120 acre parcel for $72,000 plus closing costs. So are there any questions for me on that?
Questions from?
Mr. President, for Roy, from your pictures, it doesn't look like it was fenced. Why did they keep this 120 acres out originally? Was it a purpose?
Mr. President, Commissioner Brokaw, I'm not actually sure.
Doesn't look like
Why they
a
did.
housing lot
Yeah,
opportunity for them, so.
they don't have legal
Curious,
access.
Just
It's
curious about
just a
that.
landlocked parcel.
From what I can recall, Mr. President, this in holding was there when we purchased the property, and it never was, it's not like when we purchased it from Spence and Moriarty that they kept this out.
Okay.
This was already, my understanding and recollection is it was already an in holding. Now the owner is willing to sell it.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, any other discussion or questions that we have on this? Then I would be looking for a motion to whether to purchase for $72,000, 120 acre allotment in the Spence Moriarty. Place.
So moved.
It's moved by Commissioner Ladwig, seconded by Commissioner Lundvall. All those in favor of the purchase, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, the next item we have is the Saratoga Game Warden Station. So in the last budget cycle, we determined that the Saratoga Game Warden Station needed to be replaced. And so after an extensive search of the Saratoga market, a house was found that meets the department's requirements. The property is located at 132 Safari Drive, just on the east side of Saratoga. The property is a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath house with a 2-car garage. The property also comes with 2 additional vacant lots on each side of the property. They can be used for a shop in the future if we need one. The appraisal was completed supporting the price of $455,000, and we are under contract on that. And just to mention that we budgeted $425,000 for a Saratoga Game Warden Station. We looked for a long time and we could not find anything for that price. And this is the best property we could find over the last year. So basically, if this is approved, we'll need an additional $26,655.13 to finish the closing on the property.
26,000 what?
$26,655.13.
So the motion would be to approve the $26,655.17.
13 cents.
13 cents additionally.
That's correct.
Okay, is there any questions or any
Mr.
kind of
President, I have
comments?
some questions.
Okay,
The map is helping. So we're getting 3 lots. We have a home on the middle lot, it looks like in the picture.
That's correct. Right there in the middle.
Do we know
2
how
lots,
old,
one on
how
each
old
side.
this house is?
It was built in 2012.
Okay, so
Commissioner
we've got a
Brokaw.
new home, basement underneath, or was it just the 3 bedrooms, 1 level?
3-bedroom, 1 level. And the Game and Fish shop is located right over here, so it's nice that they could just drive straight over there and get to the shop.
Is it a stick-built house or a modular?
Mr. President, Commissioner Doobie, it's a modular house, but a very well-built one based on the inspection that was completed.
And it's ready to go for occupancy.
Yes, Mr. President, Commissioner Brokaw, the family has already moved out of the house, and so it's ready to be moved into.
no more questions? Okay, we entertain a motion to approve an additional $26,655.13 towards the Saratoga Game Warden Station house.
So moved.
It's
Second.
moved by Commissioner Jolovich, seconded by Commissioner Byrd. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead. The one thing I want to backtrack just one little bit, Eric, and I need Eric if you get a chance. One question I forgot to ask you on this Jackson housing project. Last time I recalled that there was, it was incorporated, the Auburn Fish Hatchery had a house that was going to be built and they couldn't get anybody to build it. And I remember, I don't, I remember something we were going to incorporate that housing with that. Is that to be part of it?
That is correct, Mr. President.
Okay.
Yeah, that's still the plan. Of course, once we get through the construction manager at risk interviews, they know that that's part of the whole package deal along with the Jackson employee housing to add that additional house. So whenever they give us their final bid for their maximum guaranteed price, that will include that Auburn house,
Would that be in phase 1 or phase 2?
phase 1.
Okay, so it'd be 6 + 1 then, right? Or
Correct, Mr. President, and I'll need to double check that because I believe phase 1 was 6 employee houses and 1 seasonal unit, plus the Auburn house, which would be a total of 7, 8.
I was just making sure because it struck me as soon as you left, I was gonna answer, but.
Understand, sir.
thanks. Thank you. I guess, ready for, for agenda item number 19, and Chief Osterlund.
Afternoon, President Roberts, Commissioners, Director Nesvik. This afternoon, as the director mentioned, I've got an update on the recent discovery of zebra mussels in Pactola Reservoir, which is located in the Black Hills region of South Dakota. So back in July, they had the South Dakota Game Fishing Parks had an adult mussel reported by a spear fisherman that was diving in Pactola. And he provided the agency with a pair of sunglasses that had adult mussels attached to the sunglasses. So following that, the Bureau of Reclamation did sampling for veligers, which veligers are, if you recall, are the small microscopic offspring of the adult zebra mussels. And 2 of the 4 plankton toes contain those veligers. So July 14th, the agency declared Pactola infested. See if I can operate this. There you go. So what's alarming about this is you can see the proximity of Pactola to Rapid City and the state line running there. So that's 28 air miles from the border of Wyoming. And you can see Keyhole up there by Moorcroft and the other large body of water nearby at Newcastle is LAK. So that's a big jump from, we knew that the zebra mussels have been migrating up the Missouri main stem for a while and then jumping to different water bodies in the eastern part of South Dakota. But we hadn't seen anything this far west prior to this discovery. So we've been doing Colorado put this together, but you can see Pactola Reservoir right there at the epicenter of those radiating dots that come out of there in that upper slide. And then it's more zoomed in on that bottom slide. So you can see that there's a lot of boats that operate in Pactola that are going west. And so that's concerning to us. And like I mentioned, the 2 water bodies that are closest are Keyhole and LAK. And this next slide, you'll see that it just shows that by zip code where these boats are going from in Pactola. So I think this really illustrates that watercraft is still a very significant vector for the distribution of the zebra mussels. They're going everywhere from Florida to Nevada to Oregon to up in the northeast portion of the country and points in between. And this is a little tiny reservoir, and it's in a series of reservoirs in the Black Hills, which is concerning, and I'll hit on here in just a minute. So since January 2020, Wyoming has inspected 174 boats that were used on Pactola. And of those 174, 136 were destined to Wyoming waters. And you can see on the right-hand side of that slide, Keyhole has been the primary destination for those watercraft, followed by Glendale, and then all the way down to places like Jenny Lake over in the Tetons and the Snake River, and even in the Yellowstone River. So these boats are making their way around Wyoming, and which is concerning to us. So what have we been doing? So since we got this notification, we've increased the sampling efforts that we've been doing at Keyhole and LAK. And to date, we haven't got any information back that shows any findings. We've increased staffing hours at Beulah and Keyhole check stations. So as I mentioned before, our primary approach to AIS interception in Wyoming is a perimeter approach. So we've got check stations at the major arteries coming in the state. And we also, like at Beulah, and then we also have a check station at Keyhole. So we hired a few more inspectors to try to fill the gaps because the workload at these stations has increased since we got this notification. We changed our, you'll see that bullet point 3, we changed our protocols, inspection protocols. So prior to July, everything on the eastern side of South Dakota, east of Missouri, was considered high risk. So anything that came from any of those waters that came into the state, it was a mandatory decon. Since Pactola, all South Dakota now is red. So everything that comes into the state has to be decon, which means those decons are more labor intensive by the inspectors, and they take longer to do a boat, which means a longer wait time if we don't have enough manpower at enough people at the stations. So we've hired these extra inspectors at the stations. That being said, we anticipate more waters in the Black Hills to become positive in the future. Like I mentioned, that this is one reservoir in a chain of reservoirs. And as the awareness of having them there is now at the forefront, hopefully they'll be inspecting or doing more sampling, and they're probably going to find more. So right now, as I mentioned, it's everything that's coming in the state is being decon. So that's 5 to 6 times increase from previous year. So at the end of the year, when it's all said and done, we figure we're going to be deconing 300 to 400 decons at Beulah alone. So jumping down to LAK, which is just outside of Newcastle. LAK we've got a cooperative agreement with True Ranches to have public access at that reservoir. It's owned by the True Ranch, and they're good enough to allow us to have public access in there for fishing. It's a great fishery, and it's one of the few fisheries around Newcastle for that community. So once we got this information, we almost immediately we got a hold of the True Ranches and personnel from the Casper region and from our AIS section, had a meeting with them just to let them know that Pactola, which is LAK's the closest water body from there. And at this point, we do not have any inspection stations at LAK. So we want to let them know. So what precipitated from that meeting was that we're closing LAK reservoir starting August 1st for all watercraft. So anything that has a paddle, electric, internal combustion engines is prohibited at LAK. Now you can still use a float tube, wade and fish and that sort of thing, but any watercraft is prohibited. And that was just to have an initial response to protect that water and the infrastructure at LAK. So we've increased our outreach and education efforts statewide and locally. And then we've been doing coordination calls with Montana, South Dakota, Bureau of Reclamation, and the Forest Service. And just recently, one of our AIS personnel was on a call with them. And some of the information he gathered from there was that Forest Service is sending about 5 to 7 additional personnel to do inspections there. South Dakota only has 3 personnel to help at this time with inspections. And that's just inspections. The amount of decons that they're able to do there is very minimal, which is concerning to us. Montana has even stepped up and is sending personnel up there to help as well. South Dakota's program is relatively small. If I remember correctly, it's in the $300,000 to $500,000 range is what they spend annually. So they have very little capacity to do anything right now because of their manpower constraints. Their primary effort is outreach and education. Right, just recently, as part of this coordination call, South Dakota reported that they had deconned a boat that did have adult zebra mussels on it that was removed from a slipper at a marina. And that was on the opposite side of the reservoir from where the sunglasses were found. So that's the second detection of adult zebra mussels there. Right now at Pactola, there's still about 200 boats residing in slips at marinas there. They have to be out by September 22nd, I believe it is. It's unknown what kind of inspection process they'll go through or decon process they'll go through. We've requested, our personnel have requested to get that information if there's any Wyoming boats that are moored there. They're coming back so that we can follow up with those people and potentially do inspections. So our folks are working hard trying to get on top of this already. What's certainly concerning for us. So some of the challenges moving forward, as I mentioned, South Dakota has limited capacity to effectively contain infestations. They're only performing exit inspections. They do not have any kind of rapid response plan in place like we do. And like I said, mussel locations they continue to increase every year in South Dakota, and we anticipate there's going to be more in that Black Hills region. Some of the things that are challenges for us moving forward is staffing issues in remote locations like Beulah. There's only a small population in that area between Sundance and Beulah, and we've reached out and we're advertising places like Spearfish, and we've offered to have lodging, provide camp trailers for people to come from Spearfish over there. So we're working hard to try to enhance our abilities to inspect over there. But that's one thing we're going to be looking at hard in these next months is what do we need to do to get more people on the ground for next year. And with that, how do we address watercraft access in LAK? Are we going to have to put an inspection station there or provide the opportunities for people to be inspected if they're coming? Because it's a pretty straight shot from on the southern route from Pactola over to LAK or from Rapid City, and there's no inspection stations there. Looking at Glendale, which I mentioned, there's boats from Pactola going there. The need for additional coverage for boats coming into Wyoming from the southern Black Hills to Glendale, a Lusk check station. So in the past, in the early years of the program, we did have a check station at Lusk, but the number of boats there just didn't warrant trying to have personnel there. So, but certainly we're thinking that that might have to be on the table for next year. Mentioned increased staffing needs to address increased workloads at the current locations, and then also new check stations. And with that, that might mean increased budget capacity for the AIS program. And with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Better job with the picture. Picture is really obnoxious.
Isn't that a nice fish?
Is who caught it for him? Sorry.
I think I just got fired.
As an actor.
Mr. President, I do have some questions. Saving you, John. I'm saving you. Trying to redirect. So the Pactola is on the Missouri.
Pactola is it's west of Rapid City, so it's in the Black Hills.
The live water from that reservoir coming into Wyoming, is there live water connection, hydraulic connection?
No, I don't think so.
So our concern are boats.
Yeah.
I think you're forward looking for next summer is right on. what can the commission, is there anything we can do now? Because you mentioned increase in labor, increase in hours, those people are working. Ashley and I have the same concern all the time. We work our good people till just too much. Is there capacity building you need right now that we can help with?
Commissioner Brokaw, I'll let the director weigh in on this. I think the first steps is we have to identify where we have greatest need, and certainly staffing is going to be that. And I think that we're going to have to, as an agency, look at how are we going to be more competitive to get these people in, whether that's increase hourly wage or what that is.
Yeah, I think, I don't know what the steps are yet, but Alan and I and others from around the state, we're going to involve other agencies as well, are going to have to consider some drastic measures. I mean, I think this is a point where we have to err on the side of being conservative, and restrictions that are uncomfortable are going to be necessary. And I realize that there will be some people that are not going to be happy with some of the things that I think we're going to have to do. And again, I don't know exactly what those are yet, but I think the whole range of options has to be explored. We cannot allow this stuff to come across our eastern border. We have to do everything we can to prevent it. I do think, most people don't want to be that person who brought zebra mussels to Wyoming. And I think education will be a huge component of anything that we do. We already do a lot of education, but it may have to be very targeted, very focused. I think that we know there are people that are picking their hours of the day to go back and forth to avoid check stations. We know that's occurring. And so we're going to have to figure out a way to address that threat. Again, most people want to do the right thing, and they don't want to be the person who brought something bad to our state, but it only takes one. And so I think the fact that South Dakota's program is it's so downscaled from what we do, that's very concerning to me. We're willing to help South Dakota out as well, but we've got our first line has to be our border. We have to be able to put our resources there first and then help out with South Dakota. But I think there's going to be some hard decisions, but they're going to be necessary. And I wanted Alan to get this in front of you right away, even before we've really made any decisions on what we're going to recommend or what we're going to do. But this is going to be elevated up to the highest levels because it's going to have that kind of a political effect, I believe. The restrictions we're going to talk about are going to be significant.
I don't think most people understand the consequences.
I don't either.
I agree, and I appreciate your comments. And I guess from my position as a commissioner to the department, we've done such a good job. You've done such a good job to this point. Don't let us encumber you in any way. If you need something, be bold. And I think we as a commission, we need to stay on top of this hard.
Appreciate that, Commissioner. And I also wanted to recognize Paul Mavrakis. He's the Regional Fisheries Supervisor here in Sheridan. And I don't know, Paul, if I missed anything you want to add.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about our response in the least bit. Is South Dakota, are they testing in surrounding waters? Or, do they have the capacity to do any type of testing? Or is it just on an emergency type basis, so to speak?
A very limited basis of testing.
So are they discussing any plans on closing waters to boats or anything like that? Anything?
Not to my knowledge, no. Their response, in our opinion, has been pretty hands-off. We've got it. And, they're just anticipating spread.
So our ability to help South Dakota would be from ground zero almost, which is not practical.
We have, Commissioner, we have talked about offering, and maybe Josh Leonard, who runs AI's program, I can't remember, he might have even offered for us to come over and do help them with some sampling. And we'd have to make sure that we put all the protocols in place to make sure that if we brought a boat over there or equipment, that we're making sure that it's all being disinfected before we come back, which they would do, but, oh, yeah, there's Reed. I didn't, so this is Reed Moore. He's our AIS specialist in Sheridan that runs a program for up here. Sorry about that. I didn't see you there, but you snuck in.
Commissioner Doobie. So the testing for South Dakota, they don't do any of their own testing. The Bureau of Reclamation out of North Dakota, so the Bismarck office does all of the water sampling for the Black Hills. And so they have, in response to this emergency, they came down and tested at Pactola to confirm that there were zebra mussels reproducing there. And then they began sampling Deerfield, but they typically sample Sheridan, Pactola, Belfouche Reservoir, Angostura Reservoir, and Shade Hill in South Dakota. And then this year's the first year they've sampled Deerfield because of the close proximity. It's a Forest Service water. The Bureau of Reclamation is not it's not a Bureau of Rec water, but because of the close proximity, they went in and sampled it. They haven't got those results back yet. Probably next week they should get the results back from an Angostura sample and a Deerfield sample.
So Bureau of Rec, do they have plans or do they have any response type plans?
The Forest Service, Bureau of Reclamation, and South Dakota Game Fish and Parks are working to try to figure out what their plan is because none of them have staff to do anything. Their typical sampling is sampling early in the summer, which is the same sampling protocol we follow, where we sample early in the summer once water temperatures are above 55 degrees, when mussels are most likely to reproduce. And then again, late in the fall before temperatures drop below 55 degrees so that the mussels would still be reproducing so they can be most easily detected. And so they are doing those samplings in the next few weeks, likely in all of those reservoirs in the Black Hills. And then they're working on what their plan will be next summer with the finding of the results this fall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going to be one of our other concerns is keyhole typically gets white hot fishing in October. And when that happens for walleye and crappie, we see boats from everywhere. And they're gonna be showing up from South Dakota. And at that time of year, we in the past, we just haven't had check stations open there very much, but we're gonna have to do everything we can this year to do our best to try.
Is there any consideration to banning South Dakota boats on the short term, or is that too extreme? You know,
Above my pay grade.
I think that's an option that has to be on the table. I don't know that we can do it that quickly, but possibly, yes. I think that's one of those hard decisions we need to consider.
See, that's what I'm thinking. That's the line of thoughts I'm thinking. Just shut it down.
Yeah, as an
Turn it around.
emergency response. Mr. President.
I've had some discussions in my local area. People have asked me questions and I'm going to pass them on. One of them was the fact of, does the possibility of villagers or mussels or whatever coming in on clothing, waders, shoes, is there any inspection requirement that in that regard, being they're so close?
Commissioner Ladwick, I'm gonna let Reed wade into that. There is not, but there are some things that we've done around the state, so. But it is a concern, definitely.
So realistically, anything that comes into contact with the water has some level of concern. There's no legal requirement for anything other than conveyances, so water hauling equipment, equipment like water pumps. We inspected those sort of things, but for like water toys and clothing accessories, there's no requirement for an inspection. The risk is much lower in comparison. They're not typically in high humid environments. So compartments of boats are the biggest risk. Veligers are very fragile. They're very young organisms that don't tolerate a lot of variable conditions. And so they need high humidity or water present. And so with those, there's not near as big of a risk as like live wells, where when a live well is closed, even if they're not wet, it's a high humid environment that can allow those to persist. But there definitely is a concern with those. And we have laws regarding things that are hauling water because of how much higher the risk is when there's water present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Thank you, Commissioners. Okay, at this time, do the call to the public and Ronnie is it Hein? No, this will be our last item today, and we've got 13 minutes on this.
Thank you very much for allowing me to have some time here. I just got a couple comments. I guess my first comment is I really don't want to see the regulation printed copies go to the buy side. I would be more than willing to pay for them or pre-order them from myself. I still enjoy having a piece of paper in my hand. I'd also like to see if there could be an exploration of when we apply for licenses, if you apply for moose and sheep and all that in front of your elk license, we have to pay this credit card fee. Is there any way that we could just leave our money on an account? And so we don't always be getting double dipped for credit card fees. I don't know. It's just $1 to me is $1. And my last one is I would like to give a big public shout out to a game warden by the name of Cody from Lovell. Last week when I was with my buddy up in the Bighorns who has Parkinson's, he harvested his moose and Cody came and checked us. And that was one great interaction with him. He needs to be publicly acknowledged for his office that he holds and for the help that he gave us. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate it. Is there any other comments or concern from anybody? Okay, at this time that I'm going to adjourn our commission meeting and we're going to reconvene tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning for the rest of it, okay? All right, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
So moved by Commissioner Brokaw,
Second.
by Commissioner Jolovich. All those in favor to adjourn for the day?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We're adjourned.